Self-harm amongst adolescents has increased by over 60% in the past decade, but understanding why young people hurt themselves is essential to helping them stop. Today, I'm examining Chapman's experiential avoidance model, a theory that's fundamentally improved how we assess and treat self-injurious behavior in therapeutic practice. Chapman's experiential avoidance model, published in 2006, reframed self harm understanding. Rather than viewing it as attention seeking, this model positions self harm as functional, specifically an emotion regulation strategy. The theory proposes that self harm functions to escape unbearable internal experiences, overwhelming emotions, intrusive thoughts, or physiological tension. When you can't tolerate what you're feeling and lack healthier coping strategies, self harm provides immediate relief. It works, which is why it becomes entrenched. Here's how it operates. An adolescent experiences intense negative emotion, overwhelming anxiety after social rejection. They have low distress tolerance and limited regulation skills. Self harm provides immediate escape. The physical sensation interrupts the emotional experience. Adrenaline kicks in, control is regained. That immediate relief negatively reinforces the behavior. The brain learns self harm works. This creates a powerful maintaining cycle. This model is particularly important for adolescents because their prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for emotion regulation, is still developing. They experience emotions with adult intensity but with child level regulation capacity. Chapman's model helps us understand self harm, not as pathology, but as a logical, though maladaptive, solution to an unbearable problem. And that reframe is therapeutically powerful. So that's the theory. Now let's examine whether the research actually supports it. Gratz and Chapman conducted a seminal study in 2007 with 133 adolescent psychiatric inpatients aged 12 to 17, all with documented self-harm histories. They wanted to test whether experiential avoidance actually explained the link between emotion dysregulation and self-injurious behavior. Using validated measures, the difficulties in emotion regulation scale and the acceptance and action questionnaire for adolescents, they found that experiential avoidance statistically mediated the relationship between emotion dysregulation and self-harm frequency. In plain English, it wasn't just that these kids struggled with emotions. It was specifically their unwillingness or inability to experience those emotions that drove self-harm behavior. This directly validates Chapman's core mechanism. Self-harm is a functional escape strategy when distress feels unbearable. Woon, Haskin, and Martin took a different approach in 2014, studying 1,473 community adolescents in Australia, not clinical populations, everyday teenagers. They examined whether distress tolerance and emotion regulation difficulties predicted non-suicidal self-injury, and crucially, what functions self-harm served for these young people. Their findings were striking. Low distress tolerance predicted self-harm engagement, particularly when adolescents lacked adaptive emotion regulation strategies. And when they asked participants why they self-harm, the primary function reported was emotion regulation, specifically to stop unwanted feelings. What makes the study powerful is the community sample, the experiential avoidance pathway operates across the spectrum. The theory has broad applicability. Together, these studies provide converging evidence from both clinical and community samples that Chapman's model accurately describes why adolescents self-harm. They are escaping what they cannot tolerate feeling. So, how does this theory actually improve therapeutic practice? First, assessment. We stop asking just, do you self harm, and start assessing what emotions feel unbearable, distress tolerance levels, and emotion regulation capacity, not just symptom checklists. Second, treatment shifts fundamentally. If self harm is experiential avoidance, telling an adolescent to just stop is useless. Instead, we build distress tolerance through ACT, expand emotion regulation skills using CBT, and teach sitting with discomfort. In my Cape Town context, I see adolescents under immense academic pressure with limited family support who've learned that self-harm works. This model gives me a roadmap. Address the avoidance, build the tolerance, provide alternative strategies. The model's strengths, empirically supported, provides concrete treatment targets, and reframes self-harm as functional, reducing shame. But gaps exist. It doesn't explain why adolescents choose different avoidance strategies. Cultural factors are under-researched, and it explains maintenance better than onset. Chapman's framework has reshaped how we conceptualize and treat adolescent self-harm, moving from symptom management to mechanism-focused intervention.